to make the tough decisions. And I would hope that I've shown people and that I've shown the voters and you on this call that I was the right person for it. I can only hope that I haven't disappointed. We did not prosecute for curfew or social distancing. We don't prosecute for small amounts of marijuana. But if you bring guns into my borough and you sell them to our kids, you're going to be prosecuted and you're going to be held accountable for your actions. So it's a balance that I think our office has made. Um, we hear people on both sides of issues, happy, unhappy, but I do what I think is right, and I have a great team with me that is involved every single day. So thank you, NAVA, for the work that you do and for pulling everyone together. Please, use us for what we are. We have not gone very far. I have a liaison to the community who has been hired as well. And just make sure that you keep in touch with me. I've gone down the block. That's the only place I've gone. And and last but not least, people ask me why I go to so many of these community events. I mean, there is some. I understand the question. We have a lot going on at the office. We had several homicides we're dealing with this week. We had a baby who was tossed out a window. We were dealing with that. The baby, by the way, is doing well, just so everybody knows. I'm sure you read about it. Baby's doing pretty well, considering the circumstances. But I do it because the first time our younger generation, especially, the first time that generation that we're trying to partner with and help, as we prosecute shooters, we want to make sure the next generation isn't picking up the gun and just continuing in that way. We need to partner with communities. And the first time they see a district attorney should not be when they're coming to get you. The first time you see a DA should be when they're trying to partner with you to make sure that your children are following the right path and the right trail. So thank you for having me here tonight. I look forward to working with you for many, many more years.
Thank you, Honorable DA Melinda Kurtz. You have always been a friend to the NAVA and to the community at large, and we certainly appreciate all you do for our community. And thank you. We have also joined by our another good friend, our acting borough president, Sharon Lee. Sharon, I see you. If you wanted to make a quick remark.
Oh, I'm going to take privilege. I didn't know Sharon was on the call still. Uh, I should have realized it. But she's doing an amazing job. Just FYI, my own opinion. Just my own opinion.
She is definitely.
I agree with you.
I agree. She's doing an amazing job. Hello, Melinda.
How are
Our
you, Jen?
wonderful district attorney. It's Jeannie Persad.
No, nice to see you.
Yes.
So,
So,
Dilip, I didn't mean to disrupt the program. I was just coming in to listen. Thank you for giving me.
here is all yours now.
No, let me get out of the way because I think there's a lot that we need to talk about. But DA Katz, thanks for that gracious hello. Listen, I was not elected. I was elected by one person, and that's the DA. And I am doing my best to prove her right. And certainly, as the DA mentioned, I think she and her top flight team at the district attorney's office have really just transformed the office, transformed the borough in ways that were unimaginable not too long ago. It's great to see that so many of the things that you promised, it's only been 10 months, but so many of the things that you promised, DA, you've already done. And it's just incredible in just the 10 years, in spite of a global pandemic, in spite of everything else that's going on. But Dilip, thank you so much. Just take a real quick thing, domestic violence. And I see our Democratic nominee, Jennifer Rajkumar. I see a lot of distinguished people in this room. But thank you to NAVA. Thank you, Dilip, for hosting this virtual town hall on DV. Domestic violence, as we know, thrives on silence. And so we can never talk about it enough. We can never talk about it enough. I'm so glad that we are streaming live on Facebook to folks who are listening we're here when you are ready. I think there are sensitivities to a survivor's agency, a sense of agency and control. And so we are here when you are ready. We know that there are sensitivities. You may feel trapped. You may have felt trapped. But as the district attorney, Linda Katz mentioned, ADA Mary Kay Quinn, and all the advocates, all the organizers, community leaders on this call, we are all here for you when you are ready. We're just a phone call away, an email away. If you don't want any of those traces, Borough Hall, you can just Google it and just come in, and we'll lead you the right way. We know that there are traces of all that, right? You can't Google necessarily in your web history domestic violence help, right? Like, we know that there are situations like that, but we're here, and thank you again to NAVA for hosting this very important discussion during this month, and all the other conversations that you facilitate to empower and strengthen all of our families.
Thank you, BP Sharon Lee. There are so many distinguished people here, but I wanted to quickly shout out to Lois Marbeck, President of the Progressive Boys United. Of course, our organizer, Shohel Rana, and community leader and civic leader, Ashok Ramcharan. And I know I'm stealing all the thunder from our moderator, and of course our Vice President Ginny Prasad and Executive Director Rokeya Akhtar. So before I actually turn over to our moderator, I'm going to take a privilege to introduce our next speaker, Democratic nominee, good friend of NAVA, and she was actually our past Executive Secretary of NAVA, Jennifer Rajkumar. Jennifer, you there?
Hi, yes, hello everybody. I'm so happy to be here again with Nava, my very good friend Dilip Nath. So yeah, I'm proud to be here before you tonight as the Democratic nominee for State Assembly, the first South Asian woman soon to be elected in the state of New York. And I am a friend of yours for a very, very long time, Dilip, and of Nava. And I really stand on your shoulders, the work that you have done, Dilip and Nava. You have empowered immigrant communities, and I won because the immigrant communities came out, and everybody else, but there was a strong turnout in the immigrant population. So I think this is my first NAVA meeting as the nominee. So I'm very excited to be here today. I love you all so much. So domestic violence. I'm thrilled that this is a cause that you have given attention to and shined a spotlight on, because it is still a plague in our society. And I believe strongly that we need to prioritize employment and housing for domestic violence victims. Because to break that cycle of violence, domestic violence victims have to be able to get up off their feet. And they can do that if they have a secure job and secure housing. In other words, if their economic rights are secure, that will help the woman break the cycle of violence. So that, I believe, is something that we need to give attention to. And when I was 18 years old, I actually interned at a domestic violence organization that you may know. It's Sanctuary for Families, New York City's largest provider for domestic violence victims. And now, as a lawyer, I sit on their legal advisory council. They do exceptional work. And one thing that I want to also highlight is the work that that group and other groups are doing to focus on specifically South Asian women and what they're experiencing. Because immigrant women experience sometimes unique hurdles. When they come to this country, there's an added layer of isolation, because a lot of the times they're away from their extended families, and being isolated from the home country can cause can make it even harder for an immigrant woman to break the cycle of violence. Other times, also undocumented women have a harder time accessing services to break the cycle of violence. And this is a big issue as well. So when I was a director of immigration for New York State, which was my last job before becoming your nominee, one thing that I saw was that undocumented women have a very difficult time now accessing services. And that really, really hinders them in getting the help that they need. So we should also, I think, work together to focus on that specific group. There are two groups, Manavi, which is in New Jersey, and Saki here in New York, both servicing South Asian women. And I hope that we can work together, all NAVA members and my office, to really empower South Asian women, and also ICNA Relief, the Muslims for Humanity group that I have worked with a lot lately, has really been very impressive, because they're starting they have started already a Muslim women's shelter that they're expanding in Jamaica. And that is very, very promising. I've toured the facility. I know our great acting borough president, Sharon Lee, has also toured it. And it is really promising, and will also serve Muslim women in Queens that are suffering right now. And as the first South Asian woman to be elected in the state soon, you bet that that's going to be a top priority, to make sure that our South Asian women are safe. And all women, but whatever we can do to protect this group, we're going to do. And I want to thank also my good friend Sharon Lee for all of the work that she has been doing for women all around the borough. I have seen it firsthand. And our DA Melinda Katz, and all of the women that are part of NAVA, that work so hard hustling around the city. Dr. Binda Babu, Rokeya Akhtar, Jeannie Prasad, I see is here. You really are shining examples. And I know that together we can really put an end to this problem. You have 100% commitment. So thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you. So proud of you. I also wanted to give a shout out to another leader, president of the CEC, Adriana Avilas. I saw her, she is here. And also the vice president for Temple, Dilraj Bachu. And of course, our communication director, Lance Lombardo. So at this point, I wanted to turn it over to our moderator for this evening, Sandy Gushan, who is the executive member of NAVA, and she's by trade, she's an author and a journalist. So Sandy Gushan, take it away from here.
Thank you, Dilip. Good night, everyone. I am Sandia Gosain. I'm truly humbled by the opportunity to moderate tonight's important panel discussion on domestic violence. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your schedules to join us, for this discussion regarding the issue of such vital importance to our community and the world around us. I would like to acknowledge, as you all heard from Dr. Dilip Nath, founder and president of the New American Voters Association, NAVA, for this amazing platform. It truly is, an amazing platform, and it's. I want to thank you for making this evening's town hall possible. A special thank you to everyone who's tuned in, and if for our Facebook viewers, if you can let us know where you're tuning in from, we would really love to know. We have a substantial amount of information to cover, but we urge you to also ask questions, and we will certainly try to get to as many as time permits. We do have an outstanding panel tonight with whom we'll meet with shortly. They'll be engaging in conversations through thought-provoked statements and questions from survivors as it pertains to domestic violence. Without further ado, let's meet our panelists. So we have with us tonight speaker and award-winning author, Global Goodwill Ambassador, USA and Global Peace Chain Ambassador, and I refer to her as a powerhouse, Dr. Bindu Babu. We also have founder and CEO of a nonprofit, VGI Mental Health, the WISE, Dr. Selena Pina Shemu, and Director of Women Empowerment and Development at the UN, the inspiring Dr. Amina Ali. Welcome to all of our panelists. And let's dive right into our discussion. So the first statement is, he was handsome, brilliant, and fabulous, but he was a controlling person. It's sad the way you can be broken down. I thought my husband was criticizing me for my own best interest. These are the words from a survivor. What are your thoughts on this when you hear this statement, Dr. Shemu?
Oh, goodness, I'm sorry.
Caught you off guard there.
I thought that was what Dr. Bindu. I'm sorry. I was listening for a child statement. I really wasn't tuned in. I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that. I'm very
Sure,
sorry.
absolutely. So he was handsome, brilliant, and fabulous, but he was a controlling person. It's sad the way you can be broken down. I thought my husband was criticizing me for my own best interest.
So I was married to him, and it lasted 2 years. And his own best interest wasn't mine. His own best interest was to control me and to keep me locked in a house where I could not have any freedom. It was a very difficult place to be, and the empowerment in that was that I had the ability to have an exit. I had a safety net that I could go to, and I was able to contact and get away from that. So, you know, when you find yourself wrapped up in situations where, you know, the outside is telling you the wrong stories, you really need to look and see what's going on in the inside first. We rush into things too quickly sometimes, and it's really important that we really take a good look in. My situation was a little bit different because I have another story that goes along with it, which I won't get into, but I survived it. It was very difficult. It was part of a long history of a lot of abuses. That the violence that he put upon me was very significant. But the love that I had from my family was able to give me the resilience to find my way out. So I hope that, you know, whoever asked the question has that love someplace that will give them the resilience to get away from that harm.
Yeah, thank you for that. Does any of the other panelists want to share their thoughts on that as well? Okay, so we'll move on to the second question. I thought I had done something to heighten his behavior. Maybe I wasn't the perfect wife. Maybe dinner wasn't perfect. Maybe I wasn't making enough money. Again, thoughts of a survivor. When you hear this statement, what thoughts come to mind, Dr. Babu?
So, plenty of thoughts. Plenty of thoughts come in my mind, because when you think about what a woman or a male, and I'm going to say women because statistically it's a higher incidence of abusive there's not only a factor of just pure out simplicity of you love your partner, you love your husband, you love your family, you want the best for your relationship between you and your partner, as well as you and individuals and extended family. We all want a positive, happy lifestyle. So what happens here? In some cultures, and I'll say especially from my culture, there's a high expectation of what a woman should do. A woman is considered in some places as a mother or next to God or someone that keeps the family together. A woman is someone to sacrifice themselves towards their husband and partner and take a load of nonsense that's not necessary. And when I say nonsense, I'm not a person who's saying you get into a disagreement and let's get a divorce. No, I'm not an advocate of divorce at all, actually. Quite frankly, I'm the complete opposite. But the question is, how much toxicity do you take in where it's a disrespect for you physically and emotionally, and that there is no care for your well-being? So when you discuss that, what happens? You sit there when you're brought up in a culture where you're supposed to be perfect by obeying your husband, or by keeping your family together for society, or keeping yourself in a place in society where you're considered the perfect and role model of what a wife should be in a family structure. Meanwhile, you're getting abused physically and emotionally. So what happens? A woman who has a role of being a mother, a sister, a daughter, a friend, cousin, you name it, all these roles lack the ability of themselves. They forget.
Mhm.
And what they do, they hold it together and they try to compensate the issues or try to deny the issues of what's actually going on in the abuse out of fear. It could be economical fear, it can be fear of society, it can be fear from their parents, it can be fear from the culture of everybody looking bad on you, people talking nonsense about your nuclear family, people thinking that your kids are going to become druggies because there's no father in this life, or how are you going to manage finances, or you're not allowed to step into my house anymore because you're divorced and I don't want my kids to think that's okay. So you have 100 factors against a woman. So what do? They take the nonsense, and that's where it goes into the stage of such abuse that you have homicide. New York City has 18% of homicide is due to domestic violence. That's pretty high. So when you consider all those things, how much does a person need to sacrifice and why? It's culture, it's different avenues, but it's important to understand that you cannot lose yourself when you're in a relationship with anybody. You have to be whole in yourself and you have to love yourself for who you are, because then only you can give that example to your kids and your family and your society. Otherwise, guess what? You're going to give that same, what you're doing is what your daughter is going to do.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. Does anyone of the panelists want to chime in? Have anything to add? Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. When you hear domestic violence, people generally think of physical abuse. Now that more awareness is coming forward on emotional violence, can you elaborate more on this for our viewers? Dr. Amina Ali?
Yes. The emotional abuse is systematic. It starts with the grooming process, the beginning process where they lure you in. I call it the rod and reel theory, where they literally throw bait out there and wait to see who catches it. But they only throw it in ponds of vulnerable fish. And I use that analogy a lot when I speak on domestic violence, and not using women to demean them as fish. I'm talking about things that are attracted to the bait. So women, especially in this situation, have a greater variance toward the bait when it deals with security, because we seek security. We are more attracted to the bait, when we don't have that male figure in our life and we're seeking that male figure. So the emotional piece starts there, and they give you the, I like to say, they like to keep the pretty picture alive, and they give you the understanding as to what they can do. Now, it continues once they get into there, and it's between the introduction and the honeymoon phase. The ending of the honeymoon phase is where the greatest, I believe, the greatest abuse happens, because that's when they lock you in. Anything else is par for course. And I'm not giving credence to the fact that once you're in the relationship, you have to stay in the relationship. Just like Dr. Bindu says, I'm an advocate for marriage and advocate for staying married, but you have to protect self. So I think in the introductory phase to the honeymoon phase, there is a huge, huge piece that you either have to see the red flags or you're going to vehemently disguise them and deny them. It's either one of the two. There really is no gray area in this, because if it was, we wouldn't be in as many relationships as we are that are dysfunctional. And I know that with all the accolades on the wall, I found myself seeing the part of, I can change him, I can fix him, I can make things better because I am a better person. Codependent as I was thinking that there was something in me as to why he chose who he chose, and why it is that I was sufficient for him to be able to reel me in. So I was that fish. I was attracted to that bait. Now, oddly enough, I had my father. Him and I are he's still alive. He's 81 years old, and he's still my best friend. But I needed something more of a tangible touch to what my father was, and I was searching for that. So when he came, and the first time he put his hands on me, I said, okay, well, maybe he was having a bad day. And then the second time he put his hands on me, then it was, well, did I do that the last time that made him do that? And then it was the selfishness, and then it was the self-servingness. And then that's when, if it hadn't already, that's when it became toxic. And that's because I could not emote an argument great enough to help to explain to him what he was doing, because he had already known what he was doing. It was intentional. It was intentional from the rod and reel to the honeymoon phase. And once he kind of got me to say, yes, I will marry you, that's when it was like, okay, got you. And got you as in locking you in. So it was almost like, because of the sereneness that I feel in marriage, or the sereneness that I wanted, as in divorce is not an option when I am married. It was the lock-in presence that allowed them to know, okay, she's not going anywhere. So I pretty much can do what I want to do. Not giving credence to the work that needed to be done on his end. The emotional tirade that kept going was not necessarily a new thing, but a persistent and manipulative thing each time it happened. So in other words, it wasn't necessarily, I'm going to be selfish today. It's going to be, well, I thought you said, and I thought this, our last conversation you said, and it was things that were turned around intentionally. It was things that were, I couldn't prove them. In our religious beliefs, we go by things we can prove, and we need witnesses. And when things are said and I don't have that proof, it's almost like, well, I thought you said such and such and such, so I'm going by what you said. And you see how you just turned that around just then. It's not what I said is what you heard or what you wanted to hear, and what I couldn't prove that you wanted to solidify. So those are the spokes. Those are the turning wheels of that emotional depravity. And I think one of the things that I saw, even with, all my pieces of paper on the wall, I couldn't functionally educate him into what his narcissism was. I could not find the words, the script, even being medically educated. I couldn't even find the DSM codes or anything that could allow this to be understood, so that there could be a reasoning to the opposite way. And I realized that he was going to be him. And the emotional side of this is knowing that, what part of that do you need to be a part of, Amina? What part of that needs to be welcomed into your life? This is him. A snake is going to be a snake. But what part of that says that you have to be a snake keeper? What part of that says that you have to live with the venom that he possesses every day? And what part of that says that you can't take that to a pet shop and drop it off? What part of that says that you just can't leave? And I think that that's where the emotional pieces came, when I had to figure out, what part of that am I enabling? What part of that am I allowing to continue in my life? He has control over his, I have control over mine. Well, what part of that is going to allow me to separate the two lives and then lead a different one without him? So this is where the emotional responsibility comes in. We call it in text emotional accountability, but I want to say emotional responsibility, because once I gained that responsibility, lives shifted, and so did the relationship. So I think that is a clear indication of taking control and taking back your own powers.
Can I just wanted to add to that, because that was really, really impactful. And it's very difficult for people who have not been exposed to toxic relationships, or who do not know what it's like to be involved in emotional or domestic physical abuse. So I just wanted to kind of put it in a nutshell so that people can understand, many people, even my clients, or even when I went through my own hell, many people would understand that if you're with a partner and if that partner hurts you, leave. If you don't leave, it's your fault.
Right.
And this concept that people think, and people don't understand that it is a bigger picture. If someone hurts you, you don't just walk away, it's you try to fix it. And this is a human tendency of a man and a woman, especially a woman who's abused. And you have to remember, it's very, especially in toxic narcissistic relationship, it's very minute, and it's called gaslighting. There's an actual term. And it's brainwashing. And when I say that, and I'm just going to say 2 points really quick, which is profound, is it's like this. Where does this come from? The person's insecurity. They're insecure, and they bring the anger for control because they don't want to get hurt. So how does this happen? Let's take a man and a woman. A man who's the abuser. They see their girlfriend. They're about to go out to a really nice party. She's wearing a dress that's a little short. She looks cute. She looks pretty. But obviously, the man, who's very possessive and insecure, will say, you know what, sweetheart, why don't you go back and change? I mean, you look amazing, but I think that's a little short, and you don't want unwanted attention. I'm trying to protect you. So women look at this as confusion of love. And then they're like, oh, he's trying to protect me. No, he's trying to control you because he's insecure. He should be proud of who you are, but instead he's trying to control you. So women misunderstand this as love. They go back and change. Then it's the next thing. How are you holding this cup? That's the wrong way to hold the cup. Did your parents teach you manners? Hold your cup right. And then it goes on and on, where a person who's abused goes into this eggshell mode because they're constantly being picked on. And it becomes a very controlling feature. Now, people will say, well, isn't that obvious? Why don't you leave? Hey, you want to lose weight? When you go to Burger King, don't eat that burger. Is it that simple? No. If we can all have that kind of control between emotion and the physical of logic, we'd all be supermodels right now. I'd be wearing a size 2 dress, right? But no, it doesn't work that way. It's absolutely not. It's the same thing. If I want to lose weight and I'm going to sit in McDonald's, I'm going to want that Big Mac. I am definitely, unless I have some superpower, I'm going to be really pulled into taking a bite, and or that piece of cake, and I'm going to gain weight. It's not that simple, folks. It's the same thing. If I'm in love with a man, and he's abusing me, and if I can't, and I don't love myself enough to pull away, I'm going to keep going back when that person keeps saying, I'm so sorry. I love you. Don't break us. Don't break our family. Don't destroy our children. Don't destroy our face in our community. Don't destroy our careers in front of others. And that's how people stay. Sorry, just wanted to put that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
I could add to that just briefly.
Sure.
Because here's the illogical part. The illogical part is that when you come from an illogical place and you're getting into this relationship for illogical reasons, that's how I got married. I was running away from a stepmother who was more abusive than he was. And his abuse, actually, I got over. I'm still not over her abuse. So there's illogical reasons, and a lot of our young people who've come through these nightmares of a life, who have been just filled with chaos, don't see those red flags. don't understand what that love is, don't know how to respond to those kinds of situations. And they think they're in this great situation because they have nothing to base it on. They're also very empty. But you come through these situations, you land. I was 18 years old. You land. You're naive. You haven't had the feelings that you need to have a fulfilling life. You don't know what fulfilling life is at 18 anyway, but you still don't have the fillers because you've been locked, blocked, and silenced for too long. So, you have to watch how you walk. We have to watch how these children are growing and how they're moving into these relationships because they don't know. And they're so used to abuse, it doesn't matter, and then it goes into the whole other phases of, oh, okay, well then, this is how it's supposed to be. Or I'm damaged goods anyway, so this is the way my life is supposed to end. So we have to look at the illogical part also, because a lot of times the kids, those folks who come through some of the traumas and toxicities in their own personal growth, that they've lost so much development, so much learning, so many other things that are important to make good decisions, end up in these really, really bad situations.
That's a great point. I think now is a good time to ask ADA Mary Kate for any resources you can offer.
Sure. So the district attorney's office, the Domestic Violence Bureau, is located in the Family Justice Center, where we coexist with 23 partner agencies. Our 23 partner agencies are offering all of their services remotely at this time due to COVID-19. But I have to say, it's been really amazing, the work that they've been able to do throughout the pandemic. I don't think they've missed a beat in making sure that survivors have access to services like housing, lock changes, shelters, that they're able to apply for orders of protection remotely. They get counseling services, therapy. Everything has been done remotely. It's been really amazing. So the district attorney's office refers people to these services, and the 23 different service providers, some of them are specific to various communities, but they're all culturally competent. They are all trauma informed. There are advocates who speak so many different languages. And what the mayor's office, who runs the Family Justice Center, what they try to do is pair each individual person who's seeking help with the best advocate for them. So someone who understands where they're coming from, understands some of their cultural concerns that some of you have brought up, and really is able to provide them with the best level of services. So someone can call the Family Justice Center now. In normal times, we're a 24-hour, I'm sorry, not 24-hour, 24-hour hotline, but 9 to 5 in person on site at the Family Justice Center. Right now, you would have to make a phone call, and I'll give you the number for the Family Justice Center is 718-575-4545. I'll also put my email address in the chat. If anyone wants to speak to me, I can make a personal referral for services to the mayor's office. And I'm more than happy to speak to anyone. I'm more than happy to do anything I can help.
Thank you. Would you mind sharing your email address just for the Facebook group?
Right now.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. So, and I'll share that a little later. Let's go on to our next question. We have, okay, so we hear a lot about the subject on narcissists and narcissistic toxic relationships. What is a narcissist? We often associate the term with men, but is narcissism a trait amongst females as well, where a male partner can be a victim? And that question's for Dr. Babu.
Absolutely. I mean, statistically, narcissists, well, in general, let me explain about narcissist. Narcissist is a person who's over self-indulged and believe that
a false belief of extreme egotistical attitude. And it's a coping mechanism they have because they are completely isolated from their self. The only way they feel any sort of confidence is when they feel they can pull either someone else down or feel in control of others. So they have a large, boisterous ego. They're usually the charm of the party. They're very, very, very well articulated, and they do know how to really pull a person in. But the thing is that since they have such a huge sense of lack of love, they tend to always control another person and step on them to feel good about themselves. So a lot of times a narcissist usually, goes after a person who is, well, social, independent, extremely financially sound, well cultivated, because that's the perfect person. If they control, they feel great, right? If you can tell, a CEO of a company to hop on one foot, it feels great that you have that kind of a power over someone. So it's a horrific circumstance, and there's a whole toxic cycle behind it. But in regards to the question, is there a female narcissist? Absolutely. The real statistics of the past of studies is saying that usually a narcissist is born from a mother. When the mother is a narcissist, like highly likely that the male son will become a narcissist because they're never good enough. When you have a female narcissist, yes, it's very toxic. It's actually much more toxic than when you have a male narcissist in an abusive relationship. Women can be really catty. They're very controlling, and the men are usually a very bad pushover, and they lose their entire self-identity and their entire soul towards their narcissistic partners. It's a very sad circumstances. They don't know what to do. They don't even know how to handle it. When you lose your own identity and who you are, and you have no reflection anymore or connection to the world, you lose connection to your family, your loved ones, your entire support system. You cling to what you know, and that is going to be your narcissist. And you have lost complete self-confidence to even start all over again. And I wanted to just reflect really quick, because I know many here I see aren't in, and who haven't been exposed to domestic violence. What I would like to bring is not just awareness, solutions. Solutions for my clients, solutions for people in our city, in Queens. Reason why I'm with NAVA, and that is we need solutions. And I understand. I like to turn the table around and say we need to reach out to the abusers. Now people are going to look at me like, what do you mean? We need to have housing for the victims. We need to have hotlines for yes, I agree. We definitely need it. But the abusers are out there, and they're not getting the help to stop and change their lifestyle. Usually what happens is when you get a toxic abuser and they get arrested, they're thrown in jail. And then either they have some sort of a jail sentence, or they get to be put into stress management, or they get anger management, which is great. But you can't sit down and build a building on top of quicksand. You need to change the foundation. Why are they abusers? And these are really simple things, to be honest with you. If we had programs where these people are put into finding out their anger problems, like where is the solution from within, go through their meditation, go through their healing process, reprogram the mindset using like epigenetics and quantum healing and all these different factors that are out there. And such a 21-day kick the habit program, we would really decrease crime rate, abuse, homicide. Society would change around, because you're helping people. It's not just sitting down and throwing someone in jail, and then you're talking about narcissists who already blame everybody. They're just gonna come back and kill you. They're not gonna go for anger management. That's punishment. So if we can turn around and bring that awareness, bringing society together to have more compassion and love and understanding that it's not just the victim, it's also the abuser, and fixing them and doing something about it to get them off the streets or get them off. Because you have to remember, women leave their abusive men maybe 5 to 7 times. We were talking about it, Sandy. And it takes almost 5 to 7 times. They leave, go back, forth, back, forth. One of those times they're going to get killed.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that, the help goes both ways.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I noticed we have Senator Leroy Comrie on. Senator, I would love for you to say a few words.
I think Latoya is from Senator office. I saw him briefly. Latoya, is he still available? Latoya?
I'm here. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if the senator is going to hop on, but if he is, he probably hop on a little bit. But I'll text Taylor just to see.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And also, I just want to briefly introduce, well, not introduce, but briefly mention Rokia. Rokia is the executive director of NAVA. And along with saying a few words, I know Rokia had a question for ADA Mary Kate.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining and whoever watching on Facebook Live. I have a question for ADA Mary Kate Quinn, that when the family goes through the tough times, especially I have a lot of family that I help individually, especially the Bangladeshi community, especially the women. They come from Bangladesh as a married women, and they come here with a different kind of dream, different kind of mindset. But when they come here, it's a different situation. It's a reality. Then family thing happened, husband and wife. So I have a situation. I'm just going to give you one situation. It's a lot of them. That wife called the cop during the pandemic, and they came. They arrested the husband, who is very abusive, still is, and then they have a 3 years old, and then the ACS got involved. So that's okay. ACS get involved. ACS comes to help the family. But sometimes it's happened that ACA started abusing the women, the mother, because sometimes mother doesn't even understand what ACA is. Sometimes mother doesn't understand what is the culture is. Mother doesn't understand what is the law is, how to react to that. Instead of ACA is comforting them or telling them it will be okay, but ACA is repeatedly threatening her, if you do this, I'm going to take your child away. If you do that, I'm going to take your child away. If you don't take your daughter to a doctor, we're going to take your child away. So mother always is in fear because that's all she has when husband is not supporting her mentally or whatever, and husband is away. So how can we fix this and make it better? Better means we need help for these women because this women doesn't speak English. Sometimes I am their media person, helping them. So many times in your office, I call, I email on behalf of them to see what's going on. So how can we improve that situation?
Well, I can't really speak for ACS, but I can speak obviously for the DA's office. And we are aware that sometimes when somebody calls 911 because of an emergency situation, it can then lead to, a whole slew of collateral consequences. And we want to do everything that we can to make this system accessible to our victims and to make sure that our victims are receiving the help that they need, and that it's not creating more difficulties in their lives. So that is why we have these partnerships at the Family Justice Center. And to bring some of them up again, we do have Safe Horizon. We work closely with Saki for South Asian women. We work with the Arab American Family Support Center. And what I would say, the best thing we could do is try to make sure that our victims are set up with someone, a caseworker, who can help to advocate for them. And what we try to do when we look at our cases, we're looking at what is the just outcome here? What is the fair outcome here? What is going to help this woman, saying woman, but obviously men as well, what is going to help empower them, give them the tools that they can leave this abusive situation. So we understand the need for collaboration. So that is why we have the highest number of referrals. We saw during the pandemic in Queens a 67% increase as opposed to the same time period last year in referrals to services through the Family Justice Center. So I think that's what we need to do, is just focus on this partnership, focus on matching our victims with the best caseworkers who can advocate for them and empower them to leave these situations. I also, one thing, this is not necessarily relevant to your question, but I realized I did not address this earlier when I had an opportunity to speak. In addition to the partnerships we have at the Family Justice Center, we also work very closely with DA Katz's Office of Immigrant Affairs. And I know that's something that some of you mentioned earlier as another barrier to people seeking help, is concerns about immigration status. So we work very, very closely with the Office of Immigrant Affairs, and we want everyone to know that we're here to help.
Thank you for answering, and that will be great, especially when the ACS people comes to the house. If they bring either over the phone, the interpreter, because sometimes they don't speak Bengali. So that's the hardest part, actually. So if you can look into that, that will be actually great help for the community. Thank you for answering my question.
And thank you for the question.
Thank you both. So we'll move on to our next statement, and I believe this will probably be our last. We are going a little bit later than we intended, but so our last question is: we are aware of physical and emotional abuse that goes into relationships and marriages, but yet no one wants to speak about it or acknowledge it in the community. How can we change the mentality of our society so that we're able to truly help victims? And this question is for all 3 or 4 of our panelists.
I'll definitely start in this one. I'm going to speak especially for the Islamic community. There is a huge, and I mean huge, pink elephant in the room when we start talking about domestic violence in cultures in the Islamic faith. Now, I can't speak for all, but I am going to speak for the African American community, which is one that's being hit hard politically and sociopolitically right now. And one of the advents of solutions that Dr. Bendu spoke about is us doing a roundtable. And I am a part of that. And it's the Diasporic Women Roundtable. And that's just what it is, women that are of the African traditions and cultures that are not of the African continent. So those that are living here and the Canadian countries. So what we do is we literally sit around a table, now virtual table, and we speak about the disparities in reporting of domestic violence within the community. Now, of course, we know COVID has locked both women, vulnerable women, and children in the house with abusers. And one of the statements that I made in one of the groups is, how fair is it when the only safe place for a child was in school away from the abuser? Now you're, not only locking that child in with the abuser, but you are not giving them an out. There is no karate, there is no softball, there is no football that they can have an outlet for. So the same goes for women, and especially Muslim women that are imposed upon cultural indifferences that are not Islamic. So one of the things that we are dealing with in the diasporic voice is that we are now being tempered by society by not getting resources, because it's assumed that because culture has dictated it, that the religion allows it. So there aren't resources that they are able to tap into other than identifying as African American or identifying as someone of a country. It's not a religious thing that we can hold. So for example, if I right now was to go into a shelter per se, 90% of the shelters are either Judeo-Christian in mindset, or they have tenants that do not adhere to or respect or allow certain things to happen for the Muslim woman. In case in point, we had 3 women that went into a shelter here in the Bronx, and the shelters offered food, during the pandemic, and they offered food that was brought in, and most of the food had food products that were in it that we couldn't eat. So not only was she locked into the shelter, but she was fed food she couldn't eat. So one of the things we said, we're going to order food. Well, you can order it yourself. Well, if you're in a shelter, chances are you don't have money to order food per se. So there was a conundrum there that was made that, you know, not only are we locked in, but because of our culture, we're not even respected in the food that is offered to us. So it's, you know, it's almost like we got to take what is given to us. And it is a far cry from the reporting of, and I'm getting back to the reporting, just showing you what is we're up against. It's a far cry for us to go into those shelters because we know we're not going to get the support. And the support is not given to us as a general option. It's given to us as an exception to the rule, or it's an other, or it's a special request, or we're seen as someone that's asking for too much, which is what one of the counselors said to the Muslim woman. You're asking too much. You want us to go through the food and find out what doesn't have pork in it? And she was like, well, if you're feeding it to the masses, why wouldn't it be agreeable to the masses? You wouldn't feed meat to a vegan. So why would it be any different for us to ask to not have pork in it? So I think in knowing that, the reporting of it doesn't go into, because if we report, we're going to be put into a shelter. Again, the victim now is victimized by having to be removed from her home when she's the one that's the victim, only to be put in a scenario where the services are below par, to say it lightly. So she would rather stay. She would find a reason, find a way, even if it's to stay. And then, you know, when he goes to work, maybe she gets her peace of mind for 5 hours, 6 hours. And then when he comes home, she's in fear again, or whatever it is. So I think knowing that the reporting, and I'm speaking specifically for the African-American community, it is at a low because, one, as people of color, we don't normally do that because we don't like people in our business, especially with the enclave of it. Then as a Muslim, we know that there aren't services for us. And then as a woman, it's a vulnerability that is toppled with all of the other umbrellas and hats we wear. So this is the experience that is happening. So I think the lowering of the report has to deal with the services that are offered. And I know ADA Mary Kate has some, but I'm pretty sure that if she looks through her list, even if it's of the Arab, it's different as a Muslim that is Arab than a Muslim that is African American. There aren't specifics for that demographic as pronounced as the other cultures in the Muslim community. So the reporting in our community is truly at a deficit, and it's really unfortunate. It really is unfortunate.
Thank you for that. We're looking to wrap up a little soon, but Dr. Babu, would you mind, chiming in really quickly? And
before I do, I think I really would like Dr. Shimo to put in a few words. She's got so much wisdom. I would love to hear what she has to say before I throw in a minute.
So, I believe the question is about opening your voice and being able to disclose. And so culturally, it's, I'm Cape Verdean American. I'm dual citizenship. And so and my practice has primarily been with Hispanic and Portuguese and the Cape Verdean and African American clientele. And all of that adds up to the same summation that we don't speak. We're too afraid to speak. We've been told not to speak. We're embarrassed for the family to speak. There's too much repercussions if you speak. And I, back in the mid 80s, was one of the dinosaurs who went around and opened voices to be able to say, for children to say, to be okay to say that they were having difficulty and things were not happening right in their home, or they were being touched, and it was okay to say no. And so we went around and kids began to open up their voices. I do a lot of work in Africa, in West Africa, Cape Verde. And what I've done is community was talked about today is so important. Safety is so important. There has to be such a housing, a situation that's in place for people to open their voices. You're not going to open your voice if you don't feel safe. If you're going to stay in the same situation that you're in, you're not going to open your voice. So in Cabo Verde, we're speaking where the abuse, the domestic violence is very high. Women are being killed every day, almost sometimes. And so I created Healing Hearts and Empowering Voices, and it's a healing circles. And everyone said that's not going to work because the taboo with mental health in Cape Verde doesn't work. So I went ahead and did it anyway. Brought somebody around to open their voice. One voice opened 100 women's voices in Cabo Verde. So we need to find that community. We need to find that that circular ventation that will open up this plantation and begin to rebuild and recrop new people. We need to be able to bring out those voices. We need to be able to bring those safe places into view so people can, we need to come, all the fragmentation that they're living with, we're just as fragmented. And believe it or not, we're still having these conversations because things are shifting. And guess what? When COVID passes, it's going to shift again. And we better be ready. We better put the circle together. We better put our hands all in one and become one collaboration and rebuild that child, because that child will become an adolescent. That adolescent will become an adult. So we need to start looking, how do we all work together in a better, where we're rebuilding and not competing or tearing apart or having control, where we're creating. We have wraparound services. I hardly get invited to the meetings. What's up with that? I'm the clinician. So we want to open voices. We need to open our voices. We need to be able to start being authentic with one another. And we need to start opening our hearts. Yeah. Because it's not about control. It's not about degrees. It's not about where we live. It's about people and building these poor little innocent, broken bodies that don't have the voice, to don't even know their voice, let alone use their voice. So there's a way to get a voice. And I think we all need to sit at that same table that Dr. Bindu is putting together and have these conversations about how do we build these voices.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that. Dr. Bindu, and then we'll hand it over to Philip Knott.
I'm not going to take too much time. We already went over, but I do want to say, and it's really important with the community is, you know, when you said dinosaur, it was what triggered me to say, you know, when I went through whatever I had to go through, you know, I did everything my parents told me to do. You know, I went to med school. I went to all the cultural expectations. I was a Bharatanatyam dancer. That's huge for, you know, in my culture and being a Hindu and my society. I was the president of the Indian Children, whatever, Kids Federation of United States for the teenagers, whatever it is. I was very, very active. Never dreamed I would be ever in a situation. I was a cheerleader. Anyway, never dreamed I would be in a situation that I was in. I never, ever, nobody, a lot of people who may know my story from the past in my community would never imagine. And the reason they feel that way is how is it, if you do the right things or the right way, can you be involved in a relationship that, you know, that destroyed you? And when I say destroyed, and this is why it's important, a voice is community was a huge gelling factor of why I stayed for like so many years. And no one knew. I kept it quiet. Nobody knew. I looked like I was in this wonderful society with a big house and doctors and this, and it was just a crock of shit. You know, and that's really what it came down to. And I went through so much going through that path and walking out, and I was alone. And that is the worst thing. And it's horrible to combat that, because it's not only just your emotions and relationship and feelings, you are alone, and your partner was a mental basket case. And you couldn't explain that because that person looked so charming and loved by the world, society, and your family. So it comes down to society ostracizing you in a position where you don't know what to do. Your family turns their back on you. Your friends turn your back on you. You're afraid your career may turn your back on you. You know, you may have a profound, as a clinician or whatever it may be. And it takes a lot for you to kind of walk out and say, hey, I need to do better, not only for my kids and myself. I did this for my society. I did this for my community. I did this in a global scale so that women and men can see, yeah, I was in the bottom where I didn't know what to do, financial, everything, I was struck. But hey, you can do this, and and that's why we need to come, as Dr. Shamo said, or as Dr. Ali has said, we have to come as a community with a little bit more compassion and gratitude for the victim, so they can really kind of come out of it and expect, yeah, they're going to keep going back. But to be like, okay, this is what it is, no judgment, do what you have to do, but also let's fix this abuser.
Yes.
You know, put them in a program for, you know, they are usually forced into anger management, stress management. But again, what's that going to do if the foundation isn't done, right? They need to go into a 21-day or some sort of, like they say, 21-day kick the habit of some sort of a program where it's law enforced that, hey, let's do some mental healing, let's do some meditation, let's figure out, reprogram that mindset, and then do your anger management and the stress management and get the tools so that you don't repeat this nonsense in society, right? And you need a herd to build that. And I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to keep talking. And this is a passionate thing, and I'm very grateful for NAVA. I'm very grateful for Dr. Nath, Rokeya, Jeannie, Sohel, Henry, and Lois, who's like the pioneer of all women empowerment that I met and I love. You know, we all should gain together and really help the people who are going through domestic violence.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of our panelists, to our viewers for tuning in. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Dilip Nath, who will conclude.
Well, thank you, Sandy Gushan. I think you have done a wonderful job. And I also wanted to thank our panelists, Dr. Bindu Babu, Dr. Selena, and of course, Dr. Ali. You've been a wonderful panelist this evening. I think we have touched up on so many issues. The only way we can get better as a society by talking more and bringing these issues more often. Look, it doesn't have to be wait for every month of October. We should be talking about the domestic violence issue all the time. Look, we living in a very unique borough where 51% of the population live here that born outside of America. They bring a very different kind of culture. The only way we can make it better is stronger unity by talking more of these issues and helping the community, building a stronger community. Now, I want to thank DA's office, and there's a lot of members join. ADA's obviously Mary Kay, she's still with us, and Kathleen Williams, she's also from DA's office, and Mohammed Rahman, who newly joined the DA's office. Great work you're doing, Mohammed. And of course, Lois, I know Bindu mentioned she's a real pioneer, and I want to pay my tribute to Lois. She has been a real trooper when it comes to women empowerment and women rights in those issues. And also, I wanted to give a shout out to our organizer Sham Karki, and of course Henry Chen. If I didn't mention anyone, please forgive me. Latoya, is Senator is coming back, or before we conclude, or should we wait another minute or so?
No, the senator is not going to be able to make it. He is at another event currently.
Okay. Well, we thank him for even coming for a short period of time. Really appreciate his help and your office, his office, the support that he's.
May I add something?
Anytime. I mean, you don't have to ask permission, Lois. Go ahead.
I just want to say that it's encouraging to hear everybody speak about this today. I started a women's center in 1974, and we called it spousal abuse, and we had a hotline, and there was no help for women. We had an underground network that we would meet them in train stations or out on the street and hide them in our homes and move them from home to home so their abuser couldn't find them. It was primarily women that we were helping. It was only women. It was a women's center. And there was no help for women at that time. So it is so frustrating that we're still talking about this way, but still encouraging that people are putting themselves out there in a more public way to help women who are going through this situation, because it was a very, all we could do is listen and say, when you're ready, when you're ready. And usually it was when the children started to be abused is when the woman would leave and take the children with her. And I visited women's shelters all over the country to see how they were operating and functioning and how we could help better. But it was a very hard time. We'd be on the phone. Often they'd be talking about suicide because they just didn't see an out. And so we did a lot of suicide intervention and counseling. So it's upsetting to me that this is still an issue that is second rate, really. It's not in the front of everybody's mind, but yet, as I said, encouraging that people of such caliber and organizations that help the community are taking this so seriously and working so hard at it. So I commend you, and I'm happy I joined you, and I'm sorry to share that with you.
No,
That here we are, all these years later, we're still doing it.
Thank you, Lois, for sharing those stories and encouraging. Again, I want to take time to thank everyone who are with us as the panelists, and also those who are viewing on the social media. Stay tuned with us. NAVA is the voice of our community. Use NAVA platform to raise awareness. We are not just a political organization. We are a community organization that bring the issue forefront. So with that, I wanted to conclude today's program, and thank you all very much for joining.
One last thing. I would like to interject. Can everyone give Dr. Dilip Nath a round of applause, please? I love this guy, and I've been behind him for 15 years.
Without Ginny, I'm lost.
As promised, I just wanted to leave, especially our Facebook viewers who didn't have access to the email address for ADA Mary Kate. It's MK QUIN as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, at queensda.org. Okay,
that's it. You're going to be flooded tomorrow.
I'm ready for it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, again. Is our Executive Secretary, Rokeya Akhtar, is still here?
She's still here.
Okay. Rokeya, so we are ending the summit for tonight. We'll see you all next time. Thank you. Stay
safe,
well and safe.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Great job, Dr. Bindu.
Thank you.
Guys.
Dr. Selena.